Welcome to another episode of Unraveling Intellectual Property with Michael Stein. In a surprise, I got George Winton back for a part three. Uh, two is not a charm for him. Three is a charm for George. George, welcome back.
Thank you, thank you. But just for the record, I am still on wife number one, so there's no three times the charm there for me.
All
Hopefully,
right, but you are George Robert Winton the third,
that's
correct?
right. That's right. I know.
All right, so three is a charm for you.
Busted, busted.
All right. So after the last episode or part, we were talking about, hey, what else can we talk about? And we came across this thing. How did George Winton get started? How does a small businessman get started? I mean, you did not come from wealth. I know how you grew up. You worked for a company, same company as me, Five Currents and Navigation Corporation, back up in New Jersey. Um, so a little bit about how you got down to Georgia and then how you got the company started and like what do you think some tips on for a small business person today they want to get started. You've got 30 something years. Just love to hear your experience.
Yeah. So I think it all started very early, still up in New Jersey, and when I was probably around the age of 10 or 12, somewhere in there, I took a correspondence class regarding locksmithing. And about that time, I thought that I would have maybe 10 or 12 vans. And I was going to be the locksmith king up there in Jersey somewhere where I'd have a bunch of vans running around, picking locks or something like that. So I took that correspondence class, and my parents knew I wasn't going to college at the time. They knew I wasn't going. And so they paid like $350 for me to go to this correspondence class online to learn about locksmithing, and
Ah,
um, and it was good. They would send me stuff in the mail, and I would do it. And I'd send it back, and then I eventually got the small parchment on the wall, and but nothing ever transpired from that. But early on,
so I don't know,
uh,
it's point for it, but I don't know if it was online back in those days.
oh, did I say online? Did I
Yeah,
say
you did say
online?
online. I'm
All
thinking
right, all right, all right.
correspondence.
No, no online. We were going postal back then.
Right, all right.
Yeah, I went postal. Well,
but
postal all the
but
way.
not in
Postal.
the traditional sense.
Yeah, it was I guess maybe we put the letter on the clothesline and sent it out to the mailbox maybe or something like that, but it was all through the postal. Yes. And so that came and went. It was a good experience, but nothing ever transpired from that. But even back then, I had an idea. And then that I didn't really have a great thirst early on. Beyond that, in my teenage years, there was a lot of learning. Learned a lot about machining. Grew up in a machine shop, and my parents had a small business. My father was a one-man show. He had a machine shop, and I can still hear my mother yelling at the end of the table, "Why are you net 120 with that customer? Why?" And so I grew up around it to some extent. And then when I got out of high school, went to work in industry for a company called Linton Industries, and as a machinist. And I realized that when I first got out of high school, I realized that I was going to be a millionaire by the time I was 21 years old, 22. And by the time I was 19, I realized that wasn't going to happen. And so I was out at a bar one night and got a friend of mine who was in college. I was still working. He laid it out for me and told me basically I wasn't going anywhere in life. And so I went back and left that job as a machinist and went back to a small community college up in New Jersey. And from there, I was able to get on to a four-year institution, rolled out of that, and started working in industry as an engineer. And I would find myself after one employer after the next, standing on their loading dock, wondering how I can basically have my own operation, how I can be in my own sandbox. Because as time rolled on to the 90s, I realized that I eventually didn't want to be in somebody else's sandbox. Guys like me make the best employee, but at the very same time, we make the worst employees. And I had the opportunity when I left an employer down here in Georgia back around the end of 95. And I got the opportunity to start something on my own with my wife's help. Of course, she still had a full-time job. She had health care. So we had health care through her. You got to have health care, right? All right. So leave the job on Friday, the corporate job on Friday, what am I going to do on Monday to generate income?
All
So
right, so you did have help in the safety of health insurance, at least.
how can you jump out? How can you leave that corporate job on Friday and jump out on Monday with no health insurance? And we had no children at that point in time,
Right.
but you still needed the health insurance, right? And so I was fortunate that my wife had a job and she had the health insurance. So we moved on for the next 2 years on her health insurance. And so that's basically how it got started. So at the beginning, it was 0% tube fabrication equipment. It was building other people's machines. And I was fortunate down here in Georgia to find OEMs that needed a passing gear. And so whether you're a small business or a medium-sized business, you got to know your passing gear. And whether even if you're a patent attorney, right? And so you get a flood of work coming in. You don't have enough attorneys on staff to do it. You got to know your passing gear. And
What
so
what does passing gear mean?
the passing gear is how are you going to get past that bulge, right? And how are you going to make things happen for the next 3 months, and then reel things back in. Right now here at Winton, we could use two more full-time software engineers, and I really could use them here in September, October, November, December, and even into February and March, I could use them. But when it comes time April, I won't need them again, and so I got to be able to throttle back. And so it doesn't make sense to hire two full-time software engineers right now. What am I going to do with them in 6 months, right? And so I can't project that far down the road. So I was very fortunate to jump out on my own with my wife's blessing. We jumped out together, basically, and just started paddling. And did we have a plan? You're talking about starting a small business. Did we have a plan? Did we go to the SBA? We worked with the SBA, but the bottom line is, hey, you know what needs to get done. And you just sometimes you got an idea. Uh, you might not have a lot of financial backing, but sometimes you just got to jump and figure out how you're going to form your wings on the way down. And I think that's what I did, right? And so we just jumped, and we had an initial plan for maybe 3, 4 months, but at some point you got to start paddling fast. And if you're a good techie, that's great. But if you can't couple that with business savvy and finding new business, um, you're going to be looking for your resume in about 5, 6 months. And you'll be floating your resume again because you're going to be out of a job. You created yourself a job for 4 or 5 months, but then it fizzled out. And so being a good techie at what you do is very important. I mean, that's how you got started maybe to begin with, right? But you got to have the flair for some level of business savvy to um, uh, bring in new business. Right? It's very important.
When you jumped out on your own, did you know you had customers waiting for you, or you literally had nothing? Like, at what stage did you say, let's do it?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think we ever would have just jumped out on our own and with zero income, zero plan, right? I mean, I am a shoot from the hip type of guy, but I have to have some kind of plan, at least in between my ears for the next several months. And what happened was, um, I had a previous employer who I left on great terms. The director of engineering knew my capabilities. The president of the company knew my capabilities, and they had a project they had to get done, and their engineering department in house wasn't signing up. They were claiming they didn't have the capacity. Well, the director of engineering looked at the president, from what I'm told, and they thought of me. They knew I had a daytime job, but they approached me a couple years after I had left that organization and asked me if I could build this. And I was all too happy to build this in my basement, all too happy. So when I left that corporate job, I jumped out and I built 5 of their machines. I think I got paid like $25,000. I was in hog heaven. That sounded like a great idea. And so I jumped out for an order that was probably worth $25,000. And it probably lasted 3 months and thereabouts. And that's how it got started. But during that 3 months, um, you got to be paddling. You got to be thinking the next thing, right? How are you going to, what's coming in next? Because these guys might not keep you busy, right? And so that's exactly what happened. So it's WFO 24/7.
So when they came to you, you were still working? Have you started Winter Machine yet, or no?
It was it's kind of fuzzy at the moment, but
All right.
I know that we had we got the contract from this previous employer, and that definitely was the impetus to jumping out on my own. I'm pretty sure that was the impetus for jumping out on our own. And without that, I don't think I would have jumped. I'm 99% sure I wouldn't have jumped. But I do know that uh, I did write an article. What if you roll it back, if you go back probably a year and a half prior to that of the that $25,000 contract that allows us to jump out, what kicked off the business part time now, call it part time because I really had two full time jobs. I had the corporate job full time, and I started this endeavor. But you could call it part time, but it really part time efforts yield part time results. So it was really around the clock effort, day, summer, and night, all weekend long for trying to kick this off. And what happened was, to be honest with you, I wrote an article as I was leaving the employer A. I wrote an article and it was published in an international magazine, and the article was about building tube bending fixtures. This is like the winter of January, February of 1996. This article was published in an international magazine. Back then, the magazine was called Tube and Pipe uh, Quarterly, and it was published in like the winter of '95. January, February '96, it was being circulated. Long story short, I got a call from a company in New Jersey called the Chrysler Corporation. They called me. They tracked me down to my house at 9 o'clock at night at my personal home. They read the article. I talked to this guy. His name was Harry. Harry said, I remember the guy. He said, "Hey, I see you can design these fixtures, but can you build them?" And at that point in time, I had two screwdrivers and a pair of pliers in my basement. I said, "Yes, I can build that fixture for you." Remember, I was a machinist by trade early on. And so, and I really had two screwdrivers and a pair of pliers in my basement. I said, "Yes, Harry, I can build that fixture for you." He sent me an order for $860. That was like Christmas for me. It was awesome. And it just, the ball started rolling from that article. And so that article and the exposure got things percolating. And so for the next year and a half, 2 years, it remained off hours, around the clock effort. But then when I got that order from that company, my previous employer, to build those five machines, that's exactly when we jumped shipped and started paddling hard. So then I got out full time. My wife maintained a job full time with health insurance, and that allowed us just to start paddling. And it's been WFO ever since.
So how long did it take for her to jump ship from her job to come to Winton full
I
time?
think it was like March of '97. She was still working full time. I left that corporate job, and all in the same month, I left the corporate job and started this gig full time. We bought a brand new car that month, and our first child was born that first month. So all three of those things happened the first month. She
Wow,
maintained her job for about a year and a half, and then she left and came on to Winton full time.
great story. And I know you promote yourselves as American made, and your products are made in the United States, which is fantastic. Uh, Anything else to add for people who are thinking about it?
It is American made. We are building these machines. They're designed, built, and fabricated here. But the truth is, the vast majority of the electrical components inside the electrical enclosure and electrical components that are on this machine, they don't come from the United States. They're coming from overseas somewhere. And so most of the steel comes from the United States, from mills in the United States. We're fabricating everything here. We're designing everything here. We're assembling everything here. Everything is serviced out of this facility here in Swanee, Georgia. But it is a global effort, and it's a global effort for the supply chain, and it's a global effort for us to promote and try to deliver this equipment worldwide.
Sounds great. All right. Thank you, George. Fascinating. Thank you for sharing your experience. And to my audience out there, thank you for tuning in. George can be reached at sales@wintonmachine.com. G Winton Machine.
G
Uh,
Winton at wintonmachine.com.
correct. Sorry
Yeah,
about that.
that's all right.
And till next time, thanks for tuning in. Take
You're
care.
very welcome. Thank you.